Good morning.
Good morning, Father.
Christmas is filled with traditions. You have them, I have them, and we all have our Christmas traditions. Maybe your Christmas tradition is to come to 10 o'clock Mass on Christmas Day. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Now, our Christmas traditions vary more often than not based on our ethnic background, be it Polish, Indian, French, Portuguese, Italian, Irish, or Cameroonian. We may do things differently on Christmas. As a child, growing up in Poland, I vividly remember that we always had 12 dishes on Christmas Eve. No meat at all. Carp, the fish of the poor, the cheapest fish you could buy, was the main dish. It really wasn't that bad. I kind of liked it. The Vigil Supper, Vigilia on Christmas Eve, was the main celebration. The first Mass was the Midnight Mass. We called it the Shepherd's Mass. There was no Christmas Eve Mass in Poland because everybody was eating at home. We always waited for the first star to appear in the sky to start the meal, unless it was cloudy. Then we had to readjust. We decorated Christmas tree on Christmas Eve, and it stayed up till the beginning of February. We put some hay underneath the tablecloth to remind us that our house was a manger and that Christ was present with us on Christmas Day. We always had an extra seat at the table just in case Jesus, as a stranger, would arrive seeking to have Christmas supper. We shared a Christmas wafer, opłatek, and wished each other Merry Christmas. And this one was the toughest one. We had to say sorry to everyone in the family for anything that we might have done to them that was wrong since last Christmas. That was not easy, but it was necessary. We fasted all day on Christmas Eve, so we were really hungry when Christmas supper started. Even the fish tasted wonderful. At last, we sang Christmas carols for hours, it seemed. My uncle played the accordion. Me and my brother, we were singing. And my brother was always out of tune. Of course, there were Christmas lights everywhere. Everything looked majestic. And the world seemed to be filled with wonder. Now, one thing that is common, it seems to me, today, despite different traditions that we may have on Christmas, is Christmas lights. It seems that they are in every culture, in every country, in every place, wherever you go. And it makes perfect sense. You know, in the Bible, when God speaks for the first time, you know, sometimes you wait to see what a little baby will say first, mommy or daddy. That's the first word. In the Bible, when God speaks for the first time, this is what God has to say in the book of Genesis. God said, we read, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light was good. Have you ever thought about that? The first 4 words that God utters in the Bible are, "Let there be light." That's how it starts. Now we know that without light, nothing would exist. Nothing would survive. Nothing can live. Light is necessary. So it makes perfect sense, doesn't it, that the first thing that God would create is light. Now, our Christmas story comes fundamentally from 2 Gospels, the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. But in the Gospel of John that we just heard, we too find a story of Christmas. As different as it may be from the one that we all know. There is no Mary or Joseph, no angels or shepherds, no manger or stable, no sheep or cows, no mention of Bethlehem or 3 kings. It's a different story. In the Gospel of John, the stable is the entire world. The manger is the entire universe into which Christ enters. John starts his Christmas story this way. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that Word made a dwelling among us. That's it. That's the Christmas story. I mean, kind of disappointing, isn't it? No angels, no glory to God in the highest. But John does not look at what happened, but what is the meaning of what happened. Jesus enters to create the world anew. God is the Word that enters the world and becomes flesh, becomes human. There is one other character in the story, John the Baptist. John the Baptist is chosen to introduce Jesus to us. The Word that became flesh. And this is what we read. A man named John was sent from God. He came to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. In the Gospel of John, in his version of the Christmas story, Jesus is the light. Now this is, in the mind of John, the second time that God speaks, "Let there be light." The first time in the book of Genesis, and now in the Gospel of John, at the birth of Christ. God speaks, "Let there be light," for the second time, and that light becomes flesh, becomes human. That's what Christmas is all about. The light that comes into the world. Now, light is a universal human need in all places and in all generations. I don't know about you, but darkness can be scary. In darkness, we get lost, confused. In darkness, we cannot see well. You run into things accidentally. The truth of the matter is, we all need the light. We need the light of God's truth in our minds and the light of God's peace in our hearts. We need God's light to guide us. Without it, life becomes more challenging and more difficult to live. We all need, I would suggest, the light of peace and truth, the light of strength and wisdom. Now, as beautiful as Christmas lights are, they draw our attention to the one light that makes all the difference on Christmas. And the name of that light is Jesus Christ, whose birth we celebrate today. He is the light of the world. So in the book of Genesis, God says for the first time, "Let there be light." On Christmas, in the Gospel of John, God says, "Let there be light," for the second time, but not the last time. One more time, God will say, "Let there be light." When Jesus speaks to his disciples and says this, "You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. And you, and you, and you, and I." As Christians, we are all called to bring the light of Christ into this world. We are all called to be God's light. That's the third time that God speaks, "Let there be light." And God continues to say it over and over and over again. We are all called to bring the light of Christ into the darkness that people sometimes face. It may be hardships, it may be war, it may be illness, it may be a loss of a loved one, it may be despair or hopelessness. Think about this. You and I are called to be a light to others in those places. That's powerful. That's powerful. But then also there are those times when we need the light to guide us. When you and I, we need to open ourselves to receive the light of Christ. So as we light the lights in our windows and on our Christmas trees, the most important light to keep on in our lives is Jesus Christ. The most important light to keep on is Jesus Christ. Merry Christmas.